It was supposed to be a normal afternoon. Nothing special. Nothing dramatic. Just another quiet day fading into the evening. Stephen was walking alone through the parking lot, headphones in, hands relaxed at his sides. Music low enough that he could still hear the world around him. Cars pulling in, doors slamming, a cart rolling across the concrete somewhere behind him. He wasn't in a rush, didn't look stressed, didn't look like he was expecting trouble. Across the street, a few guys were leaning against a car, loud, restless, the kind of energy that carries. At first, Stephen didn't even notice them, but they noticed him. Their laughter got sharper. Not friendly, not random, focused. One of them nudged the other and tilted his head in Stephen's direction. Another said something under his breath. They weren't trying to hide it. Stephen kept walking, same pace, same posture. But you could tell he felt it. That shift in the air when eyes lock onto you for the wrong reason. He didn't turn his head fully, just a slight glance from the corner of his eye. Enough to confirm. Enough to know they were watching him. Still, he didn't react. No eye contact. No change in speed. No tension in his shoulders. Just steady steps across cracked pavement and faded parking lines. The distance between them slowly shrinking. Their laughter got louder. More confident. Like they were feeding off each other. One of them pushed off the car and stood upright. Another crossed his arms. They weren't moving yet. But they were thinking about it. Stephen adjusted his headphones slightly. Kept walking straight. He wasn't looking for a problem, and he wasn't giving them a reason. From the outside, it still looked normal. Just a guy walking through a parking lot. Just a group of guys hanging out. But the space between them felt tighter now. He had no idea what was about to happen next. One of them stepped forward. Slow at first, casual, like he just decided to stretch his legs. Then another moved with him. Then the third peeled off the car and closed the gap from the side. They didn't run. They didn't shout. They just drifted into his path. Stephen stopped walking. Not dramatic. Just a natural pause because there was nowhere else to go. The one in front of him smirked. Head tilted slightly. Looking him up and down like he was inspecting something. "Where are you headed?" Stephen didn't answer right away. He pulled one side of his headphones down just enough to hear clearly. Calm face. Blank expression. "Just heading home," he said. Simple. Neutral. The guy laughed like that was funny. Another stepped closer, too close. Close enough that Stephen had to lean back slightly to keep space between them. The third circled behind him. Not fast. Not obvious. But deliberate. Now they weren't just talking. They were positioning. "You think you're better than us or something," one of them said. Stephen shook his head once. His voice didn't rise, didn't shake, didn't show fear, but he wasn't smiling either. They wanted a reaction, a flinch, an apology. Instead, they got nothing. That irritated them. One of them bumped his shoulder lightly. Not hard enough to knock him off balance. Just enough to test him. Stephen steadied himself and stayed quiet. The guy in front stepped even closer. Now they were almost chest to chest. "You didn't hear us laughing?" Stephen looked past him for a second. Then back at his face. Another laugh. Short, sharp, mocking. The one behind him tapped the back of his hoodie. A light push. Again testing. Stephen took half a step forward to keep his balance. He could feel all three of them now. In front. Side, behind. They were trying to box him in without making it look obvious. People nearby started slowing down. Not stopping. Just watching from the corners of their eyes. The energy shifted. Not loud yet, but tense. The guy to his left leaned in and said something low, something meant to provoke. Stephen didn't bite. He kept his hands down, open, relaxed, not clenched. The one in front rolled his shoulders and gave him a harder shove this time. Not playful. Not light. Stephen stumbled one step back. His headphones slipped slightly around his neck. The circle tightened. "Say something," one of them pushed. Stephen looked at each of them quickly, measuring. Still calm. "I don't want any problems," he said. That only made them grin wider. One of them clapped his hands once, like he was hyping the moment. "Oh, you don't want problems." Another small shove. Harder this time. Stephen's back foot hit the painted parking line. He adjusted. Didn't raise his hands. Didn't swing. He was giving them every chance to stop. They stepped closer again. All three now within arm's reach. Shoulders brushing. Breathing heavy. Trying to overwhelm him. Trying to make him feel small. Trying to see how far they could push before he broke. The one behind him suddenly shoved him sharply between the shoulder blades. Not a test. Not a tap. A real shove. Stephen stumbled forward 2 full steps. His headphones slipped off completely and fell against his chest. He caught himself just before falling. And when he turned around, they were smiling, like they had already decided how this was going to end. Stephen stumbled forward. His foot scraped against the pavement, barely catching his balance before he hit the ground. Before he could fully turn around, a hand grabbed the back of his hoodie and yanked him hard. The fabric tightened around his neck. Another body slammed into his side. Then a fist came flying from the right. It wasn't clean. It clipped the side of his head and grazed his ear. But it was enough. They jumped him. No more laughing. No more talking, just movement. Fast, aggressive, all at once. One of them kept hold of his hoodie, pulling him backward like he was trying to drag him down. Another swung again, wild this time. Stephen raised his arms instinctively, blocking what he could. A punch hit his shoulder. Another glanced off his forearm. They were trying to overwhelm him, throw everything at him at once. Push him down, make it messy, make it one-sided. The crowd around them froze. Some people stepped back. Some just stood there, wide-eyed. Phones started coming up slowly. But nobody stepped in. Stephen felt the pull at his hoodie again, tighter this time. The fabric choked against his throat. He grabbed the wrist holding him and twisted his body sharply. The grip loosened for half a second. That was enough. Another fist came toward his face. This one cleaner. He leaned back just in time. It skimmed past his nose. Too close. His heart was pounding now. Not panic, just adrenaline. Fast and heavy in his chest. One of them tried to hook his leg from the side. Trying to trip him, Stephen shifted his weight and widened his stance. He wasn't thinking in words. Just reacting. The one in front swung again. Stephen blocked high. The impact thudded against his forearm. Pain shot up his arm, but he didn't drop it. They were crowding him. 3 bodies pressing in, trying to take away his space. Another shove from behind. Harder this time. Stephen stumbled forward again. Almost went down, almost. But he planted his foot hard against the pavement and pushed himself upright. A fist came from the left. This one landed. It hit the side of his cheek. His head snapped slightly. The sound was sharp. The crowd reacted with a low, collective gasp. That should have been the moment he folded. That should have been when he covered up and dropped. But he didn't. He stepped back once. Just enough to create a sliver of space. The guy in front rushed in, trying to close it. Stephen's hoodie was still half twisted around his shoulder. He shrugged one arm free, fabric stretching, breathing heavy now. Another swing came. Stephen ducked lower this time. The punch went over his head. He felt the wind of it. Close again, too close again. The one behind him tried to grab him around the waist, trying to drag him down to the ground. If they got him down, it was over. Stephen drove his elbow backward hard. It connected with something solid, a grunt. The grip loosened instantly. He pulled forward and turned sharply. Now he could see all 3 of them. Faces no longer laughing, breathing heavy, eyes locked in. They rushed again, not coordinated, just angry. One threw a straight punch. Stephen parried it to the side without even thinking. Another tried to tackle him from the angle. Stephen stepped aside barely. Shoulders collided, bodies stumbled. The movement was messy now, not controlled. Not clean, shoes scraping, heavy breathing, short bursts of contact. Another fist came in fast and low. Stephen partially blocked it, but it still hit his ribs. A dull thud, pain spreading across his side. He tightened his core instinctively. Didn't step back, didn't fall. They expected him to break, to panic, to swing wildly and lose balance. Instead, he stayed upright, still breathing, still steady. The one who had grabbed his hoodie earlier lunged again, this time trying to wrap both arms around him. Stephen shoved him off hard with both hands. The guy stumbled backward 2 steps, nearly tripped over the painted curb stop. The second guy came in immediately, throwing a quick jab. Stephen slipped slightly to the right. It brushed past his cheek. He felt the heat of it. They were getting frustrated now. Their swings were faster, less controlled, more desperate. Stephen's breathing slowed, strangely. Everything felt louder and quieter at the same time. Footsteps, shouts from the crowd, his own heartbeat. He saw another punch coming before it fully formed. He blocked high again. Then another shove hit him from the side. He staggered, but he didn't go down. He adjusted his footing, shoulders squared, back straight. All 3 were still around him, still pressing, still swinging. But the chaos wasn't one-sided anymore. Stephen wasn't just absorbing hits now. He was reading them, watching their shoulders, their hips, the way they shifted before they threw. One more punch came straight at him. He blocked it clean. Solid contact against his forearm, and in that split second, he stopped reacting and started deciding. Something changed. You could see it in his eyes. Not anger, not panic. Just Stephen planted his feet. No more stumbling, no more giving ground. The next punch came at him fast and wide. He slipped it clean. For the first time, he didn't just block. He moved with purpose. He broke free from the grip still clutching at his hoodie, twisting his shoulder hard and ripping the fabric out of the guy's hand. Then he spun, direct, and threw one clean punch. No end up, no wild swing, straight down the middle. It landed flush. A solid crack against the loudest guy's jaw. The sound cut through everything. That guy's head snapped back. His body froze for half a second like it didn't understand what just happened. Then his legs gave out. He dropped. Not dramatic. Just sudden. The other two hesitated. You could see it. That tiny pause, that flicker of doubt. They expected chaos. They expected Stephen to flail. Instead, he was standing tall. Balance. Eyes locked on them now. That was their mistake. One of them rushed in, trying to recover the momentum. Stephen stepped slightly to the side and drove his shoulder forward. Not wild. Measured the impact, knocked the guy offline. He stumbled past him instead of through him. Stephen turned immediately. No wasted movement. The third one swung out of frustration. A looping punch. Stephen ducked under it and came up inside his space. Short punch to the body, tight, controlled. The guy grunted and folded slightly at the waist. Stephen pushed him back with both hands, creating space again. He wasn't chasing. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't talking. Just moving. Efficient, calm. The first guy who fell was trying to get back up, shaking his head. Disoriented. The second one circled, and sure now, their energy was different. Before, they were feeding off each other. Now they were thinking, second-guessing. Stephen kept his stance solid. Hands up, not high and tight like before, but ready. Watching their shoulders. Watching their weight shift. The guy to his right lunged again, trying to tackle him low. Stephen sprawled back just enough and shoved his head down with his forearm. The guy stumbled to his knees. Stephen stepped away immediately. No follow-up. No unnecessary strike. Just space. The third one tried to capitalize while Stephen moved. Quick jab. Stephen slipped left and answered with a short hook. It landed clean on the side of the guy's face. Not flashy, but heavy enough. The guy staggered backward 2 steps, blinking hard. Breathing heavier now. The crowd noise grew louder, not cheering. More like shock. Nobody expected this shift. A few seconds ago, Stephen was getting swarmed. Now he was dictating the pace. The first guy finally got to his feet again, unsteady. He rushed in out of pride more than strategy. Stephen didn't back up. He stepped forward. Beat him to the space. Another straight punch. Direct, precise, it connected again. The guy dropped to one knee this time, catching himself with his hand on the pavement. The other two didn't rush immediately. They hovered. Close enough to engage, far enough to hesitate. Stephen's breathing was steady now. Deep, controlled. He adjusted his footing slightly. Shoulders relaxed but ready. One of them tried to fake a step forward. Stephen didn't bite. He didn't overreact. He just watched. The tension was different now. It wasn't 3-on-1 anymore. It felt even. The second guy finally committed and threw a quick combination. 2 fast punches. Stephen blocked the first, slipped the second, and countered with a short straight to the nose. It snapped the guy's head back instantly. A step backward. Then another. Blood starting to show. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to remind him this wasn't going his way. The third guy looked between his friends and Stephen. Uncertain. Stephen held eye contact. Didn't blink. Didn't speak. The message was clear without words. You started this. Now deal with it. One more attempt. A desperate swing from the side. Stephen pivoted smoothly and drove his forearm into the guy's chest, shoving him back hard. The guy lost his balance and nearly tripped over his own feet. All 3 of them were breathing hard now. Shoulders rising and falling, no more smiles. No more laughter. Stephen stood in the center of the space they tried to trap him in. Still, balanced, in control. The momentum had flipped completely, and everyone there could feel it. Stephen moved fast, not wild, not panicked, focused. There was no wasted motion now. Every step had a reason. Every shift of his shoulders meant something. One of them tried to tackle him again, lowering his level and charging forward like brute force would fix everything. Stephen sidestepped at the last second. Clean. The guy crashed into empty space and stumbled past him, barely catching himself before hitting the ground. Another rushed in from the side, swinging hard out of frustration. Stephen leaned back just enough for the punch to miss, then stepped in close and drove a tight shot into his ribs. You could hear the air leave his lungs. Within seconds, the energy shifted. It wasn't a swarm anymore. It was survival. The 3 of them weren't attacking together now. They were reacting, guessing, hoping something would land. Stephen stayed centered. eyes moving from one to the other. Reading them, the loudest one tried to regain control, yelling something as he stepped forward again. Stephen didn't respond, didn't flinch. As soon as the guy planted his foot to throw, Stephen beat him to it. A straight punch down the middle, sharp. It snapped the guy's head back and forced him to retreat 2 full steps. Phones were fully out now. People backing up, forming a loose circle, shouts echoing around the parking lot. But inside that circle, it felt tight. Heavy. One of them came in from behind, trying to grab him around the shoulders again. Stephen twisted hard, dropped his weight, and broke free before the grip could lock. He shoved the guy away with force. The guy stumbled backward into one of his friends. They collided, messy, off balance. Stephen didn't chase, he reset, breathing steady, hands up, watching the second guy try to quick jab, testing the distance. Stephen parried it easily and stepped forward with pressure. Not reckless. Controlled aggression. The guy backed up immediately. The third one circled wide, trying to find an opening. But there wasn't one. Stephen kept turning with him, never letting anyone get behind him again. Their swings were slower now, less confident. Every time they moved, Stephen answered. A block, a slip, a short counter. Nothing flashy, just effective. One of them lunged in desperation, throwing a wide hook. Stephen ducked under it and drove his shoulder into the guy's chest, forcing him backward. The guy lost his footing and dropped to one knee again. Breathing heavy, sweat starting to show. The loudest one wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Stared at Stephen like he was trying to understand how this happened. Just seconds ago, they were laughing. Now they were struggling to stand their ground. Stephen stepped forward once, not attacking, just claiming space. They all stepped back at the same time. That's when it became obvious. Did they think he wouldn't fight back? The chaos wasn't random anymore. It was one-sided pressure, and it wasn't coming from them. One more attempt. The guy with the bruised cheek rushed in with a quick combination. 2 fast punches. Stephen blocked the first, slipped the second, and answered with a clean straight to the face. The impact stopped him cold. He froze for a second before stepping back again. The third guy looked ready to move, then hesitated, his feet shifted. But he didn't commit. Stephen held his stance, shoulders relaxed, breathing and not yelling, not talking, just present. The circle around them widened slightly as people gave more space. You could hear scattered voices now, some shocked, some hyped. But inside that space, it was quieter than before. The 3 of them were no longer attacking at the same time. They were separated, disconnected. Every move they made felt forced. Every step looked unsure. Stephen advanced 1 small step. They retreated again. No smiles now, no jokes, no confidence. Just heavy breathing and bruised pride. The fight wasn't chaotic anymore. It was controlled. And they were the ones trying to survive it. The moment it happened, the crowd froze. Phones were up recording, but hands trembled slightly. Eyes wide. Nobody spoke at first. Some took a step back instinctively. Others leaned forward, drawn in by the tension. Whispers spread through the group. Did you see that? I can't believe it. The sentences stopped mid-air, no one finishing them, because what they saw couldn't be described in words. People shifted on their feet, nudging each other, pointing, half in disbelief, half in fear. The ones closest to the fight had their faces pale, trying to keep balance as adrenaline made them jitter. Someone laughed nervously, a short, sharp sound that didn't belong. It echoed, then disappeared, swallowed by the collective hush. The energy in the air was thick, heavy, like waiting for something else to happen, but unsure what. A few whispered questions passed between strangers. Is he okay? Who is he? Why didn't they stop? But everyone's eyes stayed glued to Stephen. His calm, steady movements, his control over what had been chaos, it was magnetic. You could feel it, even from a distance. People instinctively leaned toward him, drawn in, but also wary of stepping too close. Someone gasped when one of the attackers stumbled back, holding his bruised face. You could hear the impact of the blows through the tense silence. Not loud, but enough to make the stomach tighten. A teenager in the crowd covered his mouth with both hands, eyes glued, not wanting to miss a second. Another shook her head, muttering under her breath, as if saying, I can't believe this is real. Voices started to rise, small murmurs that built slowly into something bigger. Wow. Unbelievable. Did you see that punch? Each voice fed off the other, creating a rhythm, a heartbeat in the crowd. Some people stepped closer, trying to get a better view. Others instinctively stepped back, realizing that proximity came with risk. The circle of spectators widened, creating a clear space around the fight, almost like instinctive respect. A man near the edge whispered, "He's not even trying to hurt them too badly, he's just stopping them." That observation spread quietly, and others nodded, as if recognizing the difference between someone trying to fight and someone enforcing control. Phones stayed up filming, hands shaking, faces lit by the pale glow of screens. Comments were being whispered to one another, small snippets of disbelief. A little kid clutched his mother's sleeve, wide-eyed, asking, "Mum, is he?" The mother just shook her head slowly, unsure of what to say, mesmerized herself. Someone behind muttered, "I've never seen anything like this in my life." And that was the general feeling, shock mixed with awe. It wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was the power and control, the presence of someone who could change the rhythm of a fight with a single, precise move. Every time Stephen shifted or blocked another swing, murmurs rippled through the crowd. A collective intake of breath followed each impact, each precise movement. The crowd felt every strike, every slip, every push. Eyes followed him everywhere. Heads turned instinctively. Some people unconsciously leaned forward, others shuffled backward, maintaining distance but refusing to look away. A few people whispered warnings to the attackers, "Stop. Back off." Their voices were drowned by the sheer intensity of Stephen's presence. Then suddenly, laughter broke out, not from the crowd, but from the relief of recognizing the attackers were losing control. Nervous, scattered laughter that only made the tension more alive. A man muttered, "Did anyone think he wouldn't fight back?" And everyone around him shivered slightly. The words hung in the air like a confirmation everyone had realized simultaneously. The collective heartbeat of the crowd slowed, and then picked up again, matching the rhythm of Stephen's movements. Even those at the edges of the circle felt the pull, the energy, the impossibility of turning away. The crowd wasn't silent anymore, but it wasn't loud either. It was alive, watching, reacting, collectively breathing in the precision and calm intensity that Stephen carried in every move. Every eye followed him, every heart skipped, every body tensed. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was a moment that grabbed attention, held it, and refused to let go. The air was thick with tension. Every movement seemed slower, heavier, as if time itself had been stretched. Stephen's eyes scanned the remaining attackers, calm but sharp, measuring distance, weight, balance. Each one of them was breathing hard, adrenaline making their movements jerky, uncoordinated. A slight shift in stance, and suddenly the balance of the fight tilted. One of the attackers lunged forward recklessly, overcommitting. Stephen didn't flinch. His foot pivoted just slightly, his arm extended with precision, and the man was redirected, stumbling sideways, nearly colliding with another. The crowd gasped. The attackers tried to regroup, scrambling, shouting at each other. Their confidence was evaporating fast. They were off balance, reacting instead of acting. Every move Stephen made seemed effortless, but every impact carried weight. It wasn't just force, it was control, understanding, timing. Stephen's gaze stayed steady on the lead attacker. Every feint, every flicker of movement was anticipated. There was no wasted motion. Each block, each redirection, each counter was deliberate, methodical. The attackers were becoming more frustrated, more erratic. Their frustration played right into his hands. The crowd shifted closer without even realizing it, drawn in by the momentum, by the inevitability of what was happening. You could hear murmurs of disbelief, whispers like, "How is he doing this? Is he even trying?" Then, a sudden pause. Stephen held a position that seemed simple, almost casual. His eyes never left the attackers. They were circling him now, hesitant, unsure. The fight was no longer about throwing punches. It was about testing boundaries, and Stephen controlled every inch of space. One attacker made a move, faster than before, but Stephen's reaction was instantaneous. A flick of the wrist, a shift in weight, and the man was off balance, crashing to the ground. The crowd gasped again, some covering their mouths, some leaning forward, unable to look away. The other attackers froze for just a second, just enough for Stephen to close the distance with the calm certainty of someone who knows exactly what's coming next. His stance was low, grounded, every muscle ready to act, but not a single movement was wasted. He intercepted a swing from another attacker, twisting their momentum against them. The man fell hard, his legs tangling with someone else, a tangle of chaos that Stephen never had to touch directly. The attacker's confidence was gone. Fear had replaced arrogance, and it showed in their eyes. The crowd whispered questions, low murmurs that barely carried. Was this supposed to be an easy target? The words floated through the air, heavy with shock and realization. They had assumed he would be just like any other person, unprepared, vulnerable. And now that assumption was completely shattered. Stephen didn't shout. He didn't celebrate. He just moved fluid, calm, decisive. Every attacker was either on the ground or desperately trying to regain footing. The fight had become a showcase of control, precision, and the harsh truth that underestimating him had been a mistake they would not forget. The crowd felt it. The energy shifted from tension to awe. Every step he took, every motion he made, reinforced what was happening. The attackers were no longer in control. Stephen had the entire situation contained, every angle covered, every move anticipated. Even in the chaos, there was clarity in his movements. There was a rhythm that the crowd could feel, even if they couldn't articulate it. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't reckless. He was decisive, deliberate, unstoppable in the calmness of his approach. And as the final attacker faltered, trying to pull himself up, Stephen's gaze locked onto him, steady and unyielding. The fight was nearly over. The lesson was clear. No one would leave thinking this had been simple, easy, or predictable. The attacker's overconfidence had been their undoing, and the crowd had witnessed it all unfold with eyes wide and hearts racing. Every breath the audience took matched the rhythm of the conclusion, knowing that this final moment was the peak, the undeniable proof that underestimating him had been their gravest mistake. The room fell into a tense silence. The attackers were scattered, some on the floor, others leaning against walls, catching their breath, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Their confidence was shattered, replaced by a mix of shock and fear. They had gone in thinking it would be simple, thinking they could overwhelm him, and now every assumption had been proven wrong. Stephen stood in the middle, calm, composed, his breathing steady. Not a single hair out of place, not a single sign of strain on his face. It was almost surreal to see someone who had just handled multiple aggressors with such precision, so effortless and so controlled. He scanned the room once more, eyes sharp, ensuring there was no lingering threat, no sudden move that could turn the situation back into chaos. The crowd around them was frozen. Some were staring in disbelief, mouths open, unable to look away. Others were whispering quietly to each other, their voices hushed, almost reverent. They had witnessed something extraordinary, something that went beyond a simple fight. It wasn't just about strength, it was about control, awareness, and an almost surgical precision in handling the unexpected. A few of the attackers tried to mutter excuses, but their words were weak, their tone broken. They looked at each other, realizing that their overconfidence had led to their downfall. There was a quiet tension in the air, a mix of relief and awe. Everyone present knew that this encounter would be remembered, not just as a fight, but as a demonstration of how dangerous it is to underestimate someone. Stephen's presence filled the room even in silence. He didn't need to speak, didn't need to assert dominance further. The calm after the storm was enough. Every move he had made, every calculated action during the confrontation, left an impression that words could never capture. The room had shifted from chaos to stillness, and all eyes remained on him, acknowledging his control without question. The attackers slowly began to rise, rubbing bruises and adjusting clothing, their previous bravado nowhere to be seen. They avoided looking directly at Stephen, the realization heavy in their minds that they had been completely outmatched. Fear and respect mingled in equal measure. The room felt different now, changed, as if the energy itself had shifted, weighed down by what had just unfolded. The crowd's whispers grew louder but still careful, a mixture of shock and admiration. They replayed the moments in their heads, each strike, each redirection, each instant where the attacker's movements had been anticipated and neutralized. Questions formed silently in their minds, wondering how someone could remain so calm, so in control, even under direct assault. A few people began to step closer to the scene, drawn not by curiosity alone, but by the need to witness the aftermath, to feel the space that had been dominated so completely. Stephen's presence remained commanding, yet there was no aggression now, only the quiet certainty of someone who had handled danger with skill and composure. The attackers, still recovering, moved toward the exit, defeated, wary. Their earlier energy dissipated entirely. The room, once tense and charged, settled into a strange stillness, as if everyone collectively exhaled at the same moment. There was relief, yes, but also a lingering sense of awe at what had just occurred. And amidst it all, Stephen remained, calm and collected, the eye of the storm long after it had passed. Every detail of the fight had left its mark, every action remembered, and the memory of this confrontation would linger, a quiet reminder of what happens when assumptions meet reality.